Hello, Vroomers. I am Jack.
And I'm Nick.
And you're listening to the Vroom Formula One podcast. We're available all over the internet, which you know because you're currently listening. I want to kick things off before we go any further. We're talking about Baku in Azerbaijan, and I want to kick things off with a little game. I want us to play two truths and a lie. Are you ready?
Okay, sure. Do I have to come up with any?
Nope, you can just listen, and then you have to guess which one is a lie.
Okay, go ahead.
Here's the first one. Nico Rosberg was banned from the paddock this weekend because he didn't get a COVID vaccine. Here's the second one. The driver of the day when we were in when they were racing in Spain was Sergio Perez. Here's the third one. As of let's say as of before this race, Nico Rosberg holds the record for the most consecutive times a teammate has finished in front of Lewis Hamilton with 7.
I would say the vaccine one is fake.
No, that's true.
Which one's false?
You lost.
Yeah, I did. What happens? Am I in trouble?
Nope. Just all of the rumors are going to look down on you.
I think they already do.
The lamest one was false. The driver of the day in Spain was actually Lewis Hamilton and not Checo.
Okay.
Those other two were true, though.
Great.
And the last one with the most consecutive... Why are you... That didn't sound like you were entertained by this very fun game.
I wasn't that entertained. I prefer Jeopardy.
The last one of the most consecutive times a teammate has finished in front of Lewis Hamilton will be relevant later.
Oh, spoiler alert.
Ooh. With all that fun out of the way, let's say a few really well-crafted sentences about qualifying.
Okay.
Did you get a chance to watch qualifying this week? You did, right?
I did. I watched it live, remember?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's notable nowadays.
I'm such a lazy fan. I never watch it live. I watch on replays.
Yeah, especially qualifying is quite nice.
Yeah.
Especially if there's a red flag in qualifying too. It's a bit.
Yeah.
So the coverage actually, so it's very relevant to what you were talking about. The coverage was actually delayed by quite a bit. And The reason is sort of roundabout, which was that there was a crash at the end of the F2 race, which then delayed the third practice. Mm-hmm. And there's a rule on the books that says that there has to be a 2-hour gap in between the third practice and qualifying. So because the third practice was delayed, they had to delay qualifying by like 20 minutes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Doesn't affect anything, but I did think that was sort of interesting that they have that rule on the books.
Yeah. I think it's probably to like make sure they have a set amount of time that they know they can work with the cars between FP3 and qualies.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree. And plus, yeah, if you're on the coverage, they were saying like, oh, they could get the cars ready faster. But I feel like if they promise 2 hours beforehand, they have to give them 2 hours.
Yeah. Do you want to know a fun fact?
Yes. Is it going to be true?
Absolutely. As true as I can fathom. This is my favorite track. I love Baku.
Me too. I love this track so much. It's really fantastic. Fun in the game.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's really, really fun.
It looks so cool. It's got tight, hard corners. big fast straights, you can actually pass on it.
And it's a street track, so the wall is right there.
It's a circuit, or street circuit.
Yeah,
love it.
So you get those cool. It's like you get the cool parts of Monaco without the long list of bad parts.
the laundry list of bad parts.
Very noticeable, given that we just watched them in Monaco the last time out.
Yeah.
I think I was just watching the chit chat before qualifying because it was delayed. But one thing that I caught that it's going to be a constant narrative throughout the weekend is Toto Wolff was saying that for the cars right now, they need the track to be perfectly smooth.
Right.
Because the bumps exacerbate the porpoising. And I think this is a street track. They drive normal cars here the rest of the year. And I think there's a very long, fast straight that seemed like it might have been a little bit bumpy.
Yeah. Didn't seem to affect the performance as much as we were seeing at the beginning of the year. But yeah, you could see people were shaking around a lot this whole weekend.
Yeah. Even like the Ferraris in qualifying, I think especially when we saw some onboards from them, even though they're a fast car.
Yeah.
Bouncing around a lot. Let's see. So Q1, the only interesting thing that happened was sort of negative. Lance Stroll. So this is a street track. There's not a lot of runoff, and so frequently drivers will misjudge and have to use one of the designated runoff areas. Or sometimes they misjudge and they just go straight into the wall. There's not really much margin for error.
Yeah. There's a lot of blind, maybe not a lot, but there's some blind corners on this track.
Yes, definitely. Most notably, I think that castle section, that little like chicane thing, that's really like 3 or 4 turns.
It's so cool.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure from the car, that's like totally blind too, because it's uphill.
Yeah. Yeah.
But coming into turn 7, Lance Stroll just comes in too hot and basically hits the wall straight on. And that doesn't damage his car enough for him to stop. So he proceeds to charge up and do a push lap on the very next lap, and then has a proper accident immediately right after, and that red flags the session.
Attaboy, Lance. Good job.
Yeah. I don't know why I feel like this year in particular, the paid drivers are even more noticeable, like across the board. I guess it's just maybe because there's 2 and Mazepin was so bad last year. But like both Stroll and Latifi, I feel like this year just don't look like they belong there at all.
Yeah. Agreed. Latifi's utter trash.
Yeah. There is 2 minutes and 30 seconds left at the end of qualifying 1.
Q1.
Otherwise known as Q1. But I don't really think a whole lot changes there for the drivers that we like to talk about.
I was going to say that. Q1 was very uneventful and boring, in my opinion.
Yes.
I skipped like the first 10 minutes. There's like no reason to watch the first 10 minutes of Q1. It's a waste of time.
I like to watch it to get excited. But to each their own, I suppose.
Yeah.
Q2, in the other Aston Martin, we got to have one of those serendipitous moments where we're riding on board with a driver as they crash, which I always like. Apparently he had like a brake issue or something, though. It didn't seem like a driving issue.
Yeah. I think he said it was his pedal, or after he hit the wall, he radioed into the teams, like, can you check the brake pedal? Something wrong. Something like that.
This doesn't actually red flag anything, though, so they continue on. I don't know. I have some other notes about like Red Bulls and stuff, but it's Q2, so like whatever they do here doesn't really even matter all that much. Anything else jump out to you in Q2?
No, I was kind of gonna say the same thing. Like, it doesn't matter. Like,
for the top teams, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, they made it through. That's what matters.
Yeah, like you don't need to beat your competition in Q1 or Q2. You just need to qualify.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Agreed. So with that, let's jump into Q3, the one that matters, as they say. And see, it's like I'm forgetting what happened in qualifying. I don't know that I really remember exactly what happened, and so I have to go through these notes.
I just remember like the actual outcome.
Yeah. So I guess, the one thing that's true. The one thing that I do sort of remember is the very last lap that gets pole.
Yeah.
So the first time around, I guess the thing with the street circuits, especially Monaco, but definitely here too, there tends to be a lot of accidents, especially on that final push lap, because you're right on the edge. So it's important to get a good banker lap, as they call it. So just in case your second one gets red flagged.
Is that in regard to cashing checks? Is that why they're banker laps?
Oh, I don't know. I was thinking it was like you just need to bank a lap. That's what they say on the broadcast, right? Every now and then, with like British words come up, and maybe I'm just mishearing it.
I don't know.
Maybe they're just saying they need to bank a lap, bank a lap, banker lap. But they do that, and then they all actually do get a successful final push lap. Leclerc puts in an absolutely incredible, untouchable lap. It's really cool.
I think it was the best lap I've ever seen.
Yeah, he was up by 0.3.
Yeah, it was like 3.5, I think.
Even on himself, it was incredible. It was quite something. Sainz has some sort of issue, and I think he made a little mistake or something, but he wasn't able to actually put in a time that second lap.
Yeah.
And so both Checo and Max get past him in the qualifying order, and crucially, Checo outqualifies Max for the second race in a row.
Yeah. Max seemed to be struggling, which was weird.
Yeah, he seemed to be struggling really all week. All the practice sessions, Checo was in front of him. So I agree. But I think it's going to be interesting for the race. This is me then thinking. Mostly because the Ferraris seem to carry more downforce. And so that potentially can give them faster times because they're faster through the twisty sections of the track. But as we know, overtaking happens on the straights. Yeah. And the Red Bull is faster on the straights, and that seems like a much better race recipe. And that's been the theme this year, I think, that Red Bull has been much more of a racing car than a qualifying car, even though it's just a good car, so it's been good in both. But they've been very racy.
It kind of makes sense in my opinion, though, right? Like a car that's better at passing, you could say, is like a more offensive car, whereas a car that's better through the corners and might get you a better lap time is like more of a defensive car. Because if you have the car that's performing a faster lap, you're probably going to out-qualify the car that's more offensive. So like their aim is to put themselves in front of Red Bull and stay there.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. I've never thought about it that way, but I like that. Yeah. I do think it's it's interesting because last year Mercedes was faster in the straights generally.
Yeah.
And Red Bull was faster in the turns, so they were sort of defensive last year. This year it's flipped.
Yeah.
I think most of the time I would rather be the Red Bull style car.
I agree. Except for Monaco.
Yeah, but they still won there anyway. So.
They still won there anyway.
I guess I would just rather be Red Bull, period. I would rather be the team that has Adrian Newey.
Yeah. The better team. I'd rather be. We'll talk about it more later, but remind me to never buy an Italian car.
Never buy an
Italian engineered vehicle.
car. I'll make a note. I'll remind
Thanks.
you. The other minor thing that happened that was newsworthy, Albon, I guess this might have been back in Q1. Where did he finish? Yeah, this was back in Q1. He accused Fernando Alonso of driving unnecessarily slowly to hold him up on a push lap and then bailing out halfway through the lap. And so Albon called him out.
Yeah, I knew there was something in qualifying that was worth talking about, and I forgot about it. I think it was Alonso just pulling more BS. I mean, it's not BS, I guess. If it's within the rules, he can do whatever he wants. But yeah, Albon was tight, and I think he deserved to be.
Yeah, I mean, I like Albon. I would have liked to see him, make it into Q2.
Yeah.
I think this is a good example of something that I wrote about once, actually, where it's exactly what you said. It's not technically against the rules, but it's breaking all sorts of norms.
Yeah.
And so I think the reason why you can get away with this, because if you're just not on a push lap, you can't hold someone up. You're impeding. You would get penalties for that. Mm-hmm. But what is a push lap and what isn't a push lap? There's nothing saying you can't just do a shitty push lap.
Yeah, to prevent when you have a faster time than your rivals, do a slightly slower lap, get them stuck behind you so they can't put up the time that's going to beat yours.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I guess it just seems so against the spirit of things.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thought. Like if you just went and did a terrible push lap and because your rivals behind you and you outqualified them. Mm-hmm. Huh.
Maybe Fernando's better suited as like an American lawyer than a racing driver.
He's pretty well suited as a racing driver, though.
He is, but I don't know. Maybe he's got a future. Future with the bar.
His second career.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. I would be impressed, to be honest. That'd be a very impressive second career. Next up, we have a race. To set the stage, Baku is in Azerbaijan, and it's hot there. Mm-hmm. But supposedly, the race was even hotter than they thought it was going to be. And a lot of the other running had taken place in the evening. Qualifying was like hours later than the race was.
Yeah.
So I don't think a lot of teams had a good sense of which tires, maybe not, I shouldn't say it like that. I don't think a lot of teams had a sense of the deg levels that they were going to see, how much the tires were going to degrade. And so a lot of strategy calls were a little bit up in the air.
Do you remember last year?
Yes.
Where there were tires degrading and actually like popping because they drove them too hard?
Yeah. Famously, Max was going to win until his tire failed. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure, I think you're right. I think they didn't have all the data or they didn't have all the info that they wanted to make the best decisions they could about tires. But I think most teams had last year in the back of their mind.
Yeah. They are. It's worth noting that these are totally different tires. Mm-hmm. But definitely. And Pirelli might have also, because after a few of the practices, they raised the tire pressure by like a full PSI.
Oh, wow.
Which I think protects the tire more, but it degrades performance a little bit.
Yeah.
And as a precautionary measure, they upped it.
Wow.
So as we see, most of the pack starts on the mediums, with some starting on the hards. Mm-hmm. And we're told by Crofty that the hards are probably the preferred race tire.
Yeah, I think the medium was technically a three-stop strategy.
A two-stop?
Sorry, three tires, two stops.
Yeah.
Whereas the hard was a one-stop strategy.
Yeah, maybe. I do think that it was mediums and hards basically the whole way, just the order
Yeah,
was different. I think that they tend to want to start on the softer tire because track position is important, and
Yeah.
off the line, the softer tire is going to be hotter. But then towards the back of the field, we see some guys running the hard, just for fun. Maybe you can go a little longer. I also think that mediums are probably not a bad call because of the fact that this is a street circuit, and there are often safety cars and red flags and such where you could change the tires, and so you'd get away
Yeah.
with that softer tire for free.
yeah.
So, starting the race, it's actually a very clean start. The only thing that happens that I can tell is that Checo really takes it to Leclerc in turn one and gets right by him. It felt like that was almost Max. That was like a very strong,
Yeah.
clean Max style move where Leclerc just had nowhere he could go.
Both Red Bulls actually got off the line really well. I think Max may have even gotten off the line better than Checo did, but positioning-wise, he had to tap his brakes, so he didn't get the full benefit of actually having a great start. But yeah, agreed. The way Checo kind of just like manhandled Charles, it didn't look like something he would normally do. It definitely looked more Max-like.
Yeah. I agree. I think Max had a very good start, and he was totally boxed in.
He was moving.
And so Checo goes for it. As soon as he gets by, he pulls out like a 1.5 second gap in no time, in like one lap. And pretty quickly he gets that up to, I think, like the 2.3 second range, and then seems to stop pushing. And it's his gap, so he's in first, his gap to Leclerc in second, seems to stay around that for the foreseeable future of the race while that order stays that way. A few laps in, then Perez is on the radio complaining about traction, and there's some speculation that maybe he pushed a little bit too hard out of the gate and damaged the tires during the valuable wearing in phase, which irrevocably harms the tires.
Yeah.
Then shortly after that, we see a very familiar sight, which is the Ferrari with the yellow camera pod pulling off of the track for some reason.
That poor bastard.
Carlos Sainz, his car fails, and he has to retire.
He doesn't deserve it. Maybe he does. I don't know him that well.
He doesn't
It
seem
seems like he doesn't deserve it. Yeah.
Just nothing is going his way. I think sometimes, like we've discussed on this pod, he has made his own mistakes, but
Absolutely.
he's also had some terrible luck.
Yeah.
He says like it's a brake-by-wire failure, but looking at the broadcast and listening to the announcers, it seems more like an engine thing. And I don't know any more details.
It sounded really bad. Did you hear it?
Yeah, you can hear it on the broadcast.
Sounded terrible. That doesn't really mean anything. It may have been totally fine, but the noises that car put out they sounded very abnormal.
Yeah. Yeah, and as we'll see later on, there are some other engine failures of similar makes in this Ferrari engines. And so that now looking back at this with all that new information, I wonder if it's an engine failure.
Don't buy an Italian engineered car. Don't do it.
There we go. We came back to it.
We'll keep coming back. Keep going.
Save that for later. We're going to need that. So interestingly, this is only lap 9, and they're on medium tires, which I actually don't really know what they're rated for, but more than 9 laps.
I think it was about 20.
Okay. And this causes a virtual safety car, which to review is a digital thing that they get in their steering wheel that slows them down to 40% of what their pace was. They're going slower, but they're not going as slow as a full safety car. But that does make pit stops cheaper. And so Leclerc from second comes in and they make the call to pit for the hard tires. I didn't really understand this too much.
Don't look at me. I was like, okay.
Yeah. I think as it starts to play out, I think it makes less sense. And the reason is that this is too early to do the entire rest of the race on the hards. So he's going to have to pit again. But likely the Red Bulls would be able to do a one stop going on to the hards themselves if they just wait a little bit longer. And so even though you get a cheaper first pit stop, you're still going to have to pit again.
Yeah.
And so that's only going to work if you're a good amount faster on those fresh tires to make up that gap. And I just didn't see that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Me neither. Also, the Mercedes, both Mercedes pitted. And we haven't talked about them yet, but George Russell out-qualified Lewis Hamilton just by a little bit.
Man.
Never ran through the order. I forgot about that.
SMH. Shaking my head, Jack.
So we have no idea what the order is, but we do know that Russell was a little bit ahead. But
yeah.
Interestingly, when they both pit, Russell comes out in fourth, which is where he was before. He was in fifth, but then Sainz was out, so then that makes him fourth. And he comes back out in fourth with fresh tires. And Lewis ends up in 10th somehow.
No idea. Where was he earlier? I think he was in 6th or 7th.
Yeah, I want to say, yeah.
I think Pierre
Sixth.
Split them. And then he pits and winds up in 10th. I was baffled, and I have no idea what happened.
So weird.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of places. But
my pre-race prediction was that Lewis was going to have a good race. Based on what we saw in Monaco, he was driving incredibly fast. Apparently just can't qualify as well as George, but can definitely drive the car. And
George is a really good qualifier.
Yeah.
You'd have to be like maybe one of the greatest drivers of all time to out-qualify George.
Yeah, probably.
So that's all set up now for some other racing action. Meanwhile, other interesting thing, Leclerc was in between both Red Bulls. Now he pitted and got out of the way. So all of a sudden, Max Verstappen and Checo Perez are racing each other.
Yeah.
For first and second.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
They're going fast for a while.
Yes. On a very fast track. Mm-hmm. So we'll come back to that too. Meanwhile, before anything happens up front, I think that I want to make a note of something that will be interesting later, which is that Sebastian Vettel goes for an overtake on Ocon and doesn't have it, and he pulls in to the runoff and then does an awesome power turn, if that's what they call that.
Yeah.
And only loses like 2 spots, which was super impressive. It's really, those runoffs are really narrow and the cars have like no turning radius. Mm-hmm. And if he got stuck in there for very long, that would have been race over.
It was cool.
It was cool and it was effective. And he comes back in, I think maybe P11 behind Sonoda.
Yeah, something like that.
And so he's still racing, which is cool. Cool Vettel stuff.
Cool, inconsequential stuff.
I think, as we'll see a little bit later, it's a little bit consequential.
It's a little consequential. Okay, I'll give you that.
But back to the front. On lap 15, Verstappen makes a very clean, very easy-looking move on Checo.
Yeah. At this point in time, Charles is a bit behind them, right? Because he did the extra pit that they didn't do.
Yes.
But Charles had found pace, and the 2 Red Bulls were getting caught quite quickly. And not only that, but Max was also clearly quicker than Checo was, even though Checo was in first.
Yes. I think on that lap that Max passed him, he was a second quicker on that lap.
Yeah.
The other thing was they told Checo over the radio, no fighting.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to handle it. They didn't tell him to just give the position back. Like, they didn't tell them they were going to swap. Mm-hmm. But he said, don't fight it, which I like. Because it's like, if Max is fast enough to make the move on you, then don't defend because we can't have you both crash.
Yeah, don't stick your elbows out. That's not going to help either of you.
Yeah.
Just do your lap, let Max do his lap.
And Checo did say after the race that he thought that was the right call.
Mm-hmm.
So good for you. Cool, Checo. Being cool about it.
So cool.
So very shortly after that, Checo comes in for the hards. Has a bit of a slow stop, but is still able to come out in third ahead of Russell. And for a second, it sort of looks like Russell might have a shot at Checo, but then once the tires kick in, Checo pulls away really fast. And we're reminded again how much faster the Red Bulls and the Ferraris are than basically everyone else right now.
Yeah, actually, I meant to say that too with qualifying. Those four cars are like a second quicker than the next car.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's massive. But it's at least there's two teams that are doing it instead of just one.
Yeah, I guess so.
Shortly after that, Max pits, and that gives Leclerc the lead. Max is able to get out in front of Checo still. So we have Leclerc 1, Max 2, Checo 3. And I'm guessing at this point they feel like maybe they can take these hards to the end. I think it's like a 51 lap race. This is at lap 18 with mediums to lap 18. I guess with less fuel, maybe they think they can do the hards to the end. Mm-hmm. And then that Leclerc wouldn't be able to because he pitted on lap 9, I guess is the thought. And I guess now that we're talking about this, if that was not possible, if the DEG was too high to take those hards to the end, then Leclerc's strategy of pitting so early would make sense because one of those pit stops would have been a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
But like what happens a lot recently, we don't actually get to see how that plays out.
We don't.
Leclerc's engine seems to spontaneously erupt in smoke, and he has to retire. Very
appropriate for a bright red car to, looks like a flame shooting smoke.
Yeah, Baku or Azerbaijan or something is like the land of fire or something like that, right?
Oh, wow. Sounds like Game of Thrones.
They should do a Croatian race through the mountains.
Okay.
But now both for
moving on.
Croatia is very pretty. I guess everywhere they go is really nice. They're going all over the world.
Yeah, except for Vegas. Fuck Vegas.
I think Vegas is going to be really cool.
Yeah, maybe.
So now, once Leclerc's out, then the front is basically solved for. And so we're going to move on to some other cars because I don't really think anything else happens up front.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Good.
There's this little thing going on between Danny, Rick, and Lando Norris that I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They qualified like right next to each other. Norris qualified in front, but Ricciardo was right there. There's been a lot of talk recently about how Danny Rick is underperforming and how maybe they might want to replace him. Mm-hmm. So this is interesting. He really needs to have a good race. He needs to have a lot of good races. And Lando has basically learned over the past year and a half that he's a lot better than Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah.
And I think maybe he's starting to act like it a little bit, which he's earned.
Yeah, but we know Danny is just a different driver. He's going to perform better than Lando on certain tracks.
Yeah, although I think for the most part, though, Lando, to my knowledge, has been outperforming him everywhere. But I think that's what we expect would be for them to go back and forth a lot more. I think even when Ricciardo won last year, it seemed like Lando might have had the pace to actually take him, but team orders were to keep the cars where they were because it was a 1-2 for them.
When you're such a mid-pack car, I think you just there's a win in your sights. You don't want to risk anything.
Yeah, because even a second place is so many points for the team, for the constructors, that matters to the team quite a bit.
Yeah, second matters to them way more than it would matter for one of the better teams.
Yeah, so they can't afford to risk that in any way. So in this case, the little intrigue here is that Norris started on the mediums and Ricciardo started on the hards, but Ricciardo was behind Norris to start. So to me, that makes sense. You would think the mediums would go off a little bit faster. Ricciardo might lag behind a little bit, and then Norris would pit earlier, and so they would be on these different strategies and all would be good. But for some reason, it seemed like the McLaren was actually faster on the hards. And Ricciardo is like right up on Norris for multiple laps. And he comes on the radio a few times basically saying, you need to let me by. I have a lot more pace than this.
Yeah. And
McLaren says no. So that happens for a while, and presumably Ricciardo's held up. It's hard to know exactly, but it seems like he is. And then finally Norris pits to take off the mediums around lap 21, and very shortly afterwards, Pierre Gasly passes Ricciardo.
Yeah.
And Ricciardo feels like he was held up by Norris, which pushed him back and gave Gasly the opportunity to get by. Their excuse, McLaren had said they wanted to do this so that Norris could overcut Alonso, but when Norris came out of the pits, he was nowhere near Alonso. I think Norris was in P16 and Alonso was in P12. So a little bit of a confusing decision, but clearly I don't know about clearly, they weren't saying this, but to me it seems like they were prioritizing Lando.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Joe retires again.
The third Ferrari power unit to retire from this race.
Yep. I think his fourth retirement this year.
Yeah, it sounds right.
He was having a good
race. Yeah, good whole weekend. He qualified pretty well. Actually, I think he kind of underqualified, but he had some good laps.
Yeah. I think Bottas outqualified him, but then he passed Bottas on track.
Yeah. Bottas did not look good, which also may have been a power unit thing.
That's true, actually, yeah. Every shot that I saw of Bottas was him getting passed by someone.
Yeah, which is unlike him. He normally, I don't know. He doesn't get passed that much, does he?
Yeah, no, I don't. I think he's normally pretty decent.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we come back to Vettel, who has fought his way all the way back from his error, and he actually does successfully pass Ocon this time, which is very uplifting for us fans.
Same corner, I think.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe. It was. He just decided to get it right this time.
He had practiced.
Yeah, he was just testing.
Also, Hamilton passes Danny Rick to take fifth place.
Yeah.
Also, Hamilton starts to come on the radio and complain about his back hurting quite a bit. And normally, I'm not a big fan of when Hamilton comes on the radio and complains about things, but I feel for him with that. That must be terrible.
Yeah. Speaking of his complaining, did you hear his complaint during qualies?
Oh no, I didn't.
He was all over the place during qualies, and he was like complaining about how he didn't have a toe because apparently the toe was really important to get your lap in, especially with the Merc, because the Merc has a lot of drag. So he really wanted the toe, and then he found out he wasn't going to get a toe, and he was on the radio like, I don't know how you guys expect me to do this. He was just like, you guys expect me to be capable of way more than anyone should be expected, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a terrible complaint. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
You're only allowed to say that like if you're winning.
Yeah, it's a weird message. Like,
Yeah.
like what he's saying, like, you expect too much of me?
Yeah, exactly.
You think I'm too good? You think I can
Yeah.
handle too much? I think I can handle a lot more than I can actually handle?
I guess he's kind of saying this car sucks and it's not my fault.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, George is out racing and out qualifying him, so
Yeah.
whatever.
More to come about this back pain and porpoising, but later.
Don't go anywhere. More back pain coming soon.
Stay tuned for our bonus episode where we review Dr. John Sarno's work on healing back pain. And now, back to the race. Next up, Kevin Magnussen has to retire because of a power unit failure. And
Fourth? Is that the fourth one?
he is now the fourth Ferrari power unit to fail
Ah.
in this race.
I don't know if you had your eye on an Alfa Romeo or a Fiat, but take your eye off of it.
I don't think that I could fit in a Fiat, but I
think
might
you
be
could.
able to fit in an Alfa Romeo.
I think we could get you in both of those.
I'm willing to try it if you can get me one to try, but I'm just thinking of the Fiat 500. I just don't think I could fit in there.
It's a little guy.
This causes a virtual safety car, which then causes some pit stops. The top three all come in, but they're pretty spaced out from each other, and so their order doesn't change. They just get some fresh, hard tires.
Who are our top three at this point?
That is a great question. Our number one is Max Verstappen. Our number two is Checo Perez. And right now, our number three is George Russell in the Mercedes.
Goddamn. Old reliable.
Yeah. So far, he's finished every single race fifth place or better.
He has only lost to... I really want to say this is right. No, I think McLaren had beat him. Has he only lost to Red Bulls and Ferraris? That
Oh,
can't be
yeah,
true
I'm not sure.
because of DNFs and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's almost true. It's very close to being true.
Will his success continue? Stay tuned to find out. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton also comes in, and both AlphaTauris do not, so that puts them in between Hamilton and George Russell in third.
Yes.
Also,
Are we going to talk about Yuki? We're going to talk about Yuki, right? Yeah, we are. Sorry.
oh, I thought you said we were going to talk about back pain. We are going to talk about back pain. Yes, no, the Yuki stuff is coming. This race was quite interesting from a high level. I think the first 25 laps were very much about the leaders, and then that all got sorted out, and then all these random little things happened. But I think a lot of them are quite interesting. Danny Rick comes in for mediums at this point, and he actually makes it out of the pits in front of Lando, probably because he got a cheaper pit stop because of the VSC. Now Danny Rick is in mediums, and Lando's on the hards with Lando behind Daniel Ricciardo, which we will come back to. Hamilton is able to get by Tsunoda quite easily because he's on fresher tires, presumably. But what do we see?
a weird rear wing. That's hard to say.
Yeah, I've never seen this before.
DRS flap, like almost down the middle.
Yeah. So like when they open the DRS, just half of it opens and then the other half stays shut.
That I imagine that's just gonna steer your car, right?
I guess
the drag is just gonna like pull you one direction.
Yeah, you're right. It's like if you're in a boat and you stick one oar in the water.
Yep.
So you would turn.
Yeah, yeah,
like
exactly.
The same kind of thing.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that while watching it. I wonder if he noticed that in the car. I bet he didn't, because I think later on he was surprised about this.
This is so funny.
So then Paul DiResta, I think it's Paul DiResta, who was in the booth this weekend, starts to talk about how dangerous this is. I was a little confused about why this was so dangerous, but I guess they're worried that the wing could just come off completely, and they're going so fast that would be a really dangerous projectile for other cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really more like what else could go wrong than the fact that the wing itself was malfunctioning.
Yeah. This next comment will probably reveal that I am an engineer, but I didn't see any reason why that wing would come off. I think it just seemed like it was broken in the center, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I think we're good to just to run it, to deploy it to prod, and we'll fix it later.
Yeah.
But
deploy it to prod.
So they do their own version of this in real life. They call Yuki in, and Paul DiResta is dumbfounded that they have tires out there for him. Because he's expecting them to retire the car. And so what happens is they put the tires on, and like 3 or 4 guys come running out with like duct tape. And they just duct tape it as fast as they can. And
it looks hilarious. You just see these 3 shiny pieces of tape on his rear wing.
It's also really funny to watch someone try to duct tape something quickly.
Yeah.
Because it's like they're just fumbling around with this tape, and they're just trying to wrap it as fast as they can.
Oh,
and so Sonoda was like, "What was that?" And his race engineer's like, "Oh, it was a wing problem. Just don't use DRS for the rest of the race."
I think the absolute kicker to this whole scenario is when they play the radio and Yuki's just like, "What?" And like, just don't do DRS. He has no idea what's going on, basically.
Yeah.
And they are not telling him.
And it's fine. That seems to be good enough for the FIA.
He loses a lot of places, though, which is unfortunate.
He had to pit. And, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, he goes from 5th. I think he was in 5th. He gets passed by Lewis to go into 5th, and then this happens, and he winds up in like 13th, I think.
Oh, yeah.
That sucks. That's just it's an unfortunate racer owner.
Yeah. Happened to a few other cars too, though. Mm-hmm. We can check in real quick with the lead cars just to say that there was sort of a funny little casual conversation with Verstappen and his race engineer about how slow he should go. And they're just, because he's so far out in front.
He had to be joking, right? They were just messing around.
I think they were serious.
I don't know.
Because last year his tire blew out.
Yeah.
So his race engineer is like, you should go a little bit slower. And then Max was like, but wouldn't that make my tires get too cold? And then his race engineer is like, yeah, I guess you're right.
He's winning by like 18 seconds at this point.
Yeah.
Over his teammate, who's really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, he's crushing it. They also tell him to not use DRS, and I was curious if, because AlphaTauri is their sister team, if they saw something with that wing. They've also had a lot of problems with Max's rear wings. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if they were like, just to be super safe, since you're already up by 15 seconds and you don't need it at all, let's not run into that. This is now that we're going back through this, it's like we keep circling through all these different cars and these different storylines. Back to Norris and Ricciardo. Now Norris, who's behind Ricciardo, is on the hard tires, which I think makes the McLaren faster than the medium tires, and he wants to get by Ricciardo, and then they tell him no, because we didn't let Ricciardo get by you before, and now we're going to repay the favor to Ricciardo. And Norris does not like that.
He shouldn't.
They should have let Daniel Ricciardo through when he was faster on the hards.
Yeah.
I think. And let's just finish that narrative real quick because I feel like we're just jumping around to all these things. Basically what happens is they tell him that they'll let him by to have a run at Alonso, who's in front of them, but then that never seems to materialize, and Norris actually never goes by him, and then eventually they just say, hold the positions, you're never going to catch Alonso, and we're not going to let you try to pass Daniel Ricciardo. And I don't know if you caught this, but at the end, on the very last run at that main straight, Norris pops his DRS open and runs right up almost alongside Ricciardo, but doesn't pass him, almost as if to say, you know, I could have done this.
Yeah. I mean, we're kind of jumping to the end. But
I just wanted to finish the McLaren thing, but yes,
yeah,
we are.
So Danny beat Lando by, I think, 0.3 seconds.
Wow.
That means Lando closed about 0.7 seconds on that lap just because he could, and he decided to do that. They should have given him the place. He was faster.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would have been bad to do that because they didn't let Danny Rick through when he was faster. And it would have been sort of, it just would have been bad to.
They've definitely got some interpersonal issues.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense why. Lando thinks he's better, but it's hard because Ricciardo's a lot more experienced, so then he's. And also for the team, like it's not going to affect the constructors because it's at the end of the race, and it's not worth risking crashing the cars, having to pay for it, potentially losing those points.
Yeah.
But kind of a bummer. I really wish they just let Danny Rick through because I think he's driving pretty well this weekend, and I think maybe he could have finished in front of Lando purely on merit if he had been able to run his race.
That makes sense. I'd agree with that.
But it'll be interesting to see. Maybe, I feel like we keep saying this, but maybe he's turned a little bit of a corner, and maybe he'll start to put in some better performances and get up there close to Norris.
Yeah. Also, I think ignore what I said about Yuki's place earlier. I don't think he was in 5th. He might have been in 7th or something.
Oh, okay.
Just disregard that point. He lost places. That's what matters.
I think he was in 5th, though, because Hamilton passed him right before, and I think Hamilton passed him for 5th.
Okay.
Because George was in 3rd.
Got it. And then Gasly was still ahead of
Hamilton in 4th.
Hamilton, yes.
And on lap 43, Hamilton is starting to catch Gasly, and he does end up passing Gasly on lap 44 with the DRS. Hamilton's on fresher tires because the AlphaTauri's didn't stop way back when. I think that this is another example of what keeps happening where Lewis gets super, super down in his talk after qualifying, after being out-qualified by George, and actually ends up putting in a pretty great race performance. And I think he actually got driver of the day today.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Like I said, I had a feeling he's got his racing capabilities and he's using them, but it's just not enough.
Right towards the end, he also said his seat's gone cold.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what he meant by that.
The announcers were speculating like maybe he had just gone numb from all the porpoising. His back was that messed up that he went numb.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it was like cool Mercedes code word for something.
Yeah, they're like Top Gun. Talking in code.
I've never seen Top Gun, but I'll just
they
laugh
talk
along.
in code.
Oh. Because they're in the military.
Makes sense now, right?
Yes, now I get it. And that's the race. Verstappen finishes way in front of Checo.
Yeah.
But Checo does finish in second. George Russell gets a podium. I think that's the first time I've ever sneezed on this podcast.
We've had no hiccups beside that one time that my phone was dying.
And that was even fine. I don't even think the Vroomers know about that.
I don't think they do.
Bonus points for the Vroomers if you can guess which episode that was.
It's actually pretty easy to figure out, but if you've listened to all these.
Send us an email at thevroompod is I'm pretty sure what the email address is. At gmail.com. Yes, TheVroompod at gmail.com. And we just might mention it on the show. And that will get you some clout with the other Vroomers.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the race. Afterwards, Hamilton is shown getting out of the car, and he looks like he's in a ton of pain.
Yeah.
So, we're back to back pain. I have some things to say about the back pain.
Do you?
Yes, and we're going to pause the very end of the race to talk about my back pain things. I saw that there were two interesting statements made by some team principals about this back pain.
Okay, that's where you're going. I had no idea where you were going.
That is where I'm going. Before the weekend, Toto Wolff was saying, as reported by Autosport, that Lewis is really bad. We have just got to find a solution at this stage. I think he is maybe the worst affected from all drivers, but pretty much everyone, as far as I understood from the drivers, said that something needs to happen, referring to this back pain. We're taking a total diversion into the news right now, but there have been calls being led by Mercedes for F1 to change these regulations in such a way that they can fix these porpoising issues, and the rationale is that it's bad for the driver's health. After the race, so very recently from when we're recording this, Christian Horner has some very interesting comments about this. He believes that, according to RacingNews365.com, that these teams, particularly Mercedes, are actually playing this up on purpose. I won't make that dumb joke again. To try to get try to get the F1 to change these regulations because they can't solve the porpoising problems while some other teams can. And so one thing that I kept thinking about is, why doesn't Mercedes just raise the car? And I know that it sacrifices performance, but it seems like they're sacrificing their driver's health in exchange for some extra performance. And Horner says this exact thing. He says, and I quote, "The easiest thing is to raise a car. Every team has the choice to do that." He goes on to say, "It would seem unfair to penalize the ones that have done a decent job versus the ones that have perhaps missed the targets." And he also said, if he was the team principal of a team with a heavily porpoising car, he would, and I quote, "I would tell them to bitch as much as they could over the radio and make as big of an issue out of it as they possibly could. It's part of the game." So, there's my news story about back pain. I think this is very interesting. I'm curious what you think about it. I think that Horner's sort of onto something, because Mercedes is clearly really struggling with these new regulations.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have too many thoughts. I think stuff like this is cool. Like, how far beyond the actual competition sport goes. This is kind of an example of that. Where, like, every factor is, like, it's an avenue to be competitive. And I think this is a good example of that. I think it's fun. I think when I see these things, I just think they're like funny. It's like, oh, he's doing that again. Toto's saying that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's cool. There's like a cool politics element to the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. There's always gotta love the F1 politics. There's always some political shit going on.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree. I do kind of think they're playing it up a little bit. I was thinking about that watching Lewis get out of the car. I was like trying to figure out if he was being legit or not. Just because like George is in the same car, and there's also some other older drivers, Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel, that I think they've said stuff maybe behind the scenes or in interviews, but they don't seem to have nearly as much of a reaction as Lewis.
I think Lewis is going crazy.
That could be true.
Injuries are often very mental.
Oh, we're back to John Sarno.
Yeah, sure.
That's like,
is that his hypothesis? Back pain isn't physical; it's mental.
yes, that's exactly his hypothesis. It's so funny.
Yeah.
We really are talking about John Sarno.
Yeah, I've seen that like back pain and depression are strongly linked to each other. So I would not doubt that this is a very mental thing for Lewis.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's got to be really hard to be the top dog
Yeah.
in every way and then one day not.
And it's easy to forget what just happened to the guy. Last season was scarring for him.
Yeah.
It was historically scarring. So
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it a lot, obviously, before the season started, but we haven't really talked about it too much in the past couple races.
Yeah. That must have been really hard. And then to come back from that when you felt like you were giving it your all and you deserved something that you didn't get, and then to have such a hard time and to have all these races, they're packing the schedule full of these races, and to have this teammate that's getting the better of you, who's way younger than you. Yeah, that's got to be really hard.
Yeah, it's a very, very psychological thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's my guess.
I like that guess.
Thanks.
I have a few fun facts and anecdotes about the race. George Russell has now tied Nico Rosberg's record of finishing ahead of Lewis Hamilton in 7 consecutive races.
And it only took him 7 races?
Oh, did it?
Is that accurate? I don't know.
Is this the 8th race?
I think it's like 8th or 9th.
That's interesting. Yeah, I feel like it wasn't every single race this year that he's finished ahead of Lewis, but almost all of them.
Yeah.
This also, now that Verstappen won in Baku, he is now number 10 on the all-time win list with 25 wins, tied with 2 all-time great Formula One drivers, Jim Clark and Niki Lauda.
Wow, Nicky.
Yeah. That's a pretty cool club.
Nuts. Yeah. I feel like that's not fair because
Yeah, it's not.
Nicky could have died any weekend.
Yeah, he almost did.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a fair comparison, but yeah, it's still sick. That is sick. He's so good.
I'm sure they're racing way more now. And they're probably the differences between the cars are probably so much greater now. So when you're in a good car, you can win a lot. Mm-hmm. I agree.
They're more consistent.
It's still a fun fact, though.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And here's my anecdote that I read, not that I was involved in. After the race, in the press conference, they asked Verstappen if he felt bad for Leclerc. And to continue the theme of this being our swearing episode, Verstappen says, "Shit happens." And the moderator says that they should try to keep it clean. And then Verstappen said, "Come on, that's not really a swear." And then they end the press conference, and to which Max jokes next time he will just curse much earlier.
I love that so much. We'll just curse his way out of a press conference.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I just became a bigger fan of Max Verstappen than I previously was.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So, let's run through the results real quick, shall we? Whoa. I'm knocking everything around. Sorry. Okay. Here are the results. Max Verstappen came in first place, followed by Sergio Perez, who got the fastest lap in second. So Red Bull gets a perfect weekend points-wise, but Max does not. Third place, George Russell. Fourth place, Lewis Hamilton. Fifth place, Pierre Gasly. Sixth place, Sebastian Vettel. And that's notable that he made his way all the way back from his incident to finish in sixth.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Maybe he deserved driver of the weekend. He had a great race. For him, he had a really great race.
Yeah. I'm sure that he would not like that qualification, given that he's a 4-time world champion.
Yeah.
But recently, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
He's not been, like, the past, 4 years, really, 5 years, he hasn't really been the same. I do want to apologize to those many Vroomers that watch us on YouTube. It looks like my video right now is buffering quite a bit and probably not synced up with my lips. So I apologize for that. But we're going to press forward here because we can roll with the punches here on the Vroom Pod. Fernando Alonso comes in seventh. I feel like he's got a better car than his results have been showing. And oftentimes he's been driving better than his results were showing. The Alpines were really hard to pass this week.
I think they've got the Red Bull styled car. I think they've got faster in the straights, higher, slower in the corners. So they can pass, and it's hard to pass them.
That makes sense. Daniel Ricciardo in eighth, which is great for him. I'm sure he's pretty happy with that. Pretty solid. Lando Norris in ninth, and Ocon rounding out the points in 10th. And also, the rest of these cars were lapped. Number 11, Valtteri Bottas. Albon comes in 12th, which is pretty solid, actually.
Yeah.
Finished ahead of Yuki Tsunoda in 13th, and Mick Schumacher in 14th, and Nicholas Latifi in 15th. And don't get too excited that this was an amazing finish for Nicholas Latifi, because that is the end of the cars that actually finished the race. So he was still in last. It was just a different kind of last.
5 DNFs, right?
Yeah. So the 5 DNFs were Lance Stroll, Kevin Magnussen, Zhou Guanyu, Charles Leclerc, and Carlos Sainz.
And correct me if I'm wrong, 5 mechanicals. No crashes.
Yes. That's a very astute observation. You're right.
This track just beats these cars up. That is my take.
I wonder if it's the very, very long straight.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Maybe
there's
that's
2
with
straights.
the engine, too.
It's not even just the long one. There's another long one.
Yeah, that's true. But there's one that they're like full foot down, pedal to the metal, as we say in America, for a long time.
One of the Red Bulls hit 340 kilometers an hour today.
Wow.
That's fast.
That's wild.
It's like 10 more than they normally do.
Wow. Yeah, I do think this is, I think maybe, what is it, China? But they haven't raced there in so long. But this is one of the fastest speed traps of the year. Maybe the fastest one that's on the calendar this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
So that has some championship implications, which I will now run through. Max keeps his lead, but very interestingly, Checo Perez is now in second because Leclerc did not finish the race. So Max has 150, Sergio Perez has 129. So Max did increase his lead on Sergio Perez, but there's now no one in between him.
Checo got the fastest lap today, I believe, too.
Yep.
So it had an extra point for him.
Yes, for sure. And now Leclerc is in third with 116. And George Russell is a nice solid fourth with 99. Sainz is a disappointing fifth with 83.
Yeah.
Lewis Hamilton in sixth with 62. Lando Norris in seventh with 50. Bottas in eighth with 40. Ocon in ninth with 31. Gasly in 10th with 16, tied with Alonso with 16. Magnussen and Ricciardo are both tied with 15 for 12th place. Vettel has 13 and is in 14th place. Sonoda with 11 is in 15th place. And then we have Albon in 16th place with 3. Lance Stroll in 17th place with 2. Zhou Guanyu in 18th place with 1. And then Mick Schumacher and Nico Hülkenberg with 0. And then in 21st place in a championship with 20 drivers is Nicholas Latifi.
We really need like a little sound bite every time we say that. Like confetti and like, yay!
Yeah, I really like saying that even though it's a little bit unfair, but it's okay.
It's a little bit unfair that he could pay his way into the sport, so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. The unfairness goes both ways.
Yeah.
The Constructors' Championship has shaped into the following positions. Red Bull is pulling away in first, as you would expect, given that their second place contender was Ferrari, and Ferrari didn't finish any of their cars. Mm-hmm. So Red Bull has 271, and then in second, Ferrari has 199, which is turning into a large gap. And Mercedes is not all that far behind in third place with 161. McLaren is in fourth with 65, which is an incredibly large drop-off from those top three teams, which kind of makes sense given the races that we've seen. Alpine is in fifth with 47, Alfa Romeo in sixth with 41, Alfa Tauri in seventh with 27, Haas in eighth with 15, tied with Aston Martin also with 15, and Williams with 3, all from your Alexander Albon.
Spicy. Stuff's happening. I like it.
Yes. Stuff is happening. I have one more sort of minor, sort of random, newsy thing that I want to share. Do you have anything else that you want to share?
I got nothing.
All right, here's my one other thing.
Busy. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I blame that on my buffering on my end. I didn't interrupt you. I just was buffering. So there's been a lot of talk about the cost cap for 2 reasons. One reason is that it is new this year. So naturally, we're going to talk about it. But the second reason is freight costs and other things have gone way up, and that gets counted in the cost cap. And so some teams, notably Red Bull, are asking for increases to the cost cap to account for such cost increases. There's a couple interesting facets to the cost cap rule. One is that no one has any idea what the penalty for breaking it is. So some teams might just break it intentionally. If you're Red Bull and you think it's just going to be a fine, you might just say, okay, I'll pay a fine. That sounds great. And then just continue to pay whatever you think things are worth. Mm-hmm. Which is similar to like a luxury tax. That's a thing in some other sports, right?
I don't know what that is.
I think it's like if you pay salaries over a certain amount, you just have to pay like a tax on that number. Gotcha. Over that. Another interesting thing I learned about the salary cap, and I wonder if you knew this. For one, it does not take drivers' salaries into account. And then there has been some discussion about maybe it should take driver salaries into account, but then, drivers don't really like that.
That's just so ironic because the salary cap in every other sport is almost probably strictly about how the athletes are paid.
Oh yeah, I think it totally is, right? It's just
upside down.
Yeah. The other interesting thing is each team can pick 3 technical staff to be exempt from the cost cap. So they can pick their top 3 and pay them whatever they want. So Red Bull probably pays Adrian Newey a ridiculous amount of money, and they don't have to report that in the cost cap.
That's cool. I like that.
I like that too, except I think they should be able to pay any of their staff whatever they want, because then that means you're just going to pay the mechanics less. And that seems like a raw deal because they're still traveling around to 23 races a year all over the world, probably not getting paid nearly as much as Adrian Newey anyway.
Yeah.
I kind of think they should do a cost cap for materials, but not for personnel. And then you can just try to get the smartest people to build the coolest car with the same budget.
I agree with that.
I also think, as much as, it's hard to argue that the drivers need more money, but I think in a lot of cases, they're doing something that is probably worth that money. And they're also taking a pretty big risk, and they have to travel to all these races, and I don't think they should cap the driver salaries either.
I don't think it would make much of a difference either. I mean, it would make a difference, but I don't know. I don't think it'd be world-changing.
To their incomes, you mean?
If there were a salary cap for the drivers, then the teams would look different because they wouldn't, say, Red Bull is paying Checo and Max more than any other drivers on the grid. Put in a salary cap, they wouldn't be able to maintain both of those drivers, most likely. So it'd get shuffled up. Say they'd wind up with, Yuki and Max. How different would the championship shake up if that happened to every team? It probably would revert to the mean, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure I would like that either. I sort of like how it is now.
Yeah.
The other thing is it's really easy to get around that, and I guess they probably deal with this in other leagues by outlawing it, but the sponsorships are
endorsements.
So it's weird. I don't know. I feel like you could say, Max, we're only going to pay you $1 million a year, but hey, here's our friend at Coca-Cola, and they're willing to give you $99 million a year to put their brand on your race suit, and so now you're getting $100 million a year. I don't know. Maybe that happens in the NBA or something too, but. All right, well, that's it now. We've reached the end.
What'd you learn this week, Jack?
I'm supposed to ask you that. Oh, I'm not ready for this now.
It's okay.
I think I continued to learn about the differences between the cars and the driving styles that drivers have and the types of cars they prefer. I just always find this interesting. I think the Red Bull tends to be more understeery this year, which isn't really to Max's liking, but more to Checo's liking. Whereas the Ferrari is more oversteery, which Leclerc likes. But I think I mentioned once before that Sainz said on a podcast that he likes understeering cars.
Yeah.
There's probably something like that with the McLaren and Daniel Ricciardo that I don't know about. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't really learn that by watching the race, but I did learn about it this week.
Yeah.
How about you?
I don't know, man. I'm just excited for Alonso to pass the bar.
Cool. That sounds like a really stressful second career to me, but to each their own.
It's exactly what I was going to say.
All right, well.
Sorry, everyone.
They're going to be racing in Montreal next week, And so we'll see you then, Vroomers, and I might even be in a different place.
With your plant? Where's your plant?
The plant might be back. I don't really know. Yeah, that was the reaction I was hoping for.
Peace.